All right, let's dive into a world of ancient myths and monsters.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
those stories we all devoured as kids,
Right.
filled with heroes and creatures that just seem to leap off the page.
Yeah, yeah.
Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of those iconic figures,
Okay.
the Minotaur.
It's amazing how these ancient stories, you know,
Yeah.
still resonate with us even thousands of years later.
Right.
The Minotaur,
Uh-huh.
with its human body and bull's head,
Oh, yeah.
such a striking image.
Really is.
It speaks to our primal fears and this enduring power of myth.
You asked for a deep dive into the Minotaur,
Okay.
and we've gathered a fascinating collection of sources for you.
Right.
We have ancient Greek poetry,
Wow.
vivid vase paintings,
Right.
Roman accounts,
Mm-hmm.
and even some modern retellings.
It's fascinating to see how the Minotaur myth has been interpreted and reinterpreted across different cultures and time periods.
Really is.
It speaks to the enduring power of these stories.
So before we get lost in the twists and turns of the labyrinth,
Right.
let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What can you tell us about the origins of this mythical beast?
Well, the Minotaur's story,
Mm-hmm.
it actually begins with a love affair.
Okay.
And not just any love affair.
Right.
One involving Zeus,
Of course.
the king of the gods.
Zeus and his escapades are legendary.
Right.
But how does this tie into the Minotaur?
It all starts with Europa,
Okay.
a Phoenician princess who catches Zeus's eye.
Mm-hmm.
He decides to seduce her.
Okay.
And how does he do it?
Oh.
By transforming himself into a magnificent white bull.
That's quite the grand gesture, even for Zeus.
It is.
But I'm guessing this bull isn't just a one-time appearance.
You're right.
Okay.
The bull motif plays a significant role
Mm-hmm.
throughout the Minotaur myth.
Okay.
Europa's ancestor Io
Right.
was also turned into a cow by Zeus.
Oh, wow. Talk about family history.
Yeah.
So we've got Zeus disguised as a bull and a relative who was transformed into a cow.
Right.
It seems like cattle are playing a pretty big part in this story.
They are.
Where does the Minotaur fit in?
So Europa and Zeus have a son named Minos,
Okay.
who becomes the king of Crete.
All right.
But Minos makes a crucial mistake.
What's that?
He breaks a promise to Poseidon, the
Oh,
god of the sea.
Poseidon. Okay.
Poseidon had gifted him a magnificent bull,
Uh-huh.
and Minos was supposed to sacrifice it in his honor.
Sounds like a risky move. I bet Poseidon wasn't too happy about that.
You bet. Poseidon, enraged by Minos' broken vow,
Yeah.
decides to enact his revenge.
Okay.
But instead of directly targeting Minos,
Uh-huh.
he focuses on his wife Pasiphae.
Oh, this sounds juicy.
Yeah.
What does Poseidon do?
He uses his divine powers to make Pasiphae fall madly in love.
With the bull. Oh, wait, talk about a complicated love triangle.
It is.
So how does a queen even begin to deal with feelings like that?
Well, Pasiphae, consumed by this unnatural desire, seeks help from a rather ingenious Athenian inventor named Daedalus.
Daedalus, the guy who also built those famous wings for Icarus?
That's the one.
Right.
Daedalus is a brilliant
Yeah.
but sometimes reckless individual.
Uh,
In this case, he constructs a hollow wooden cow for Pasiphae to hide inside.
Wait, so Pasiphae gets inside this fake cow to get close to the bull.
She does.
That's quite a visual.
It is, and it speaks to the lengths that Pasiphae was willing to go
Right.
to satisfy this divinely inflicted passion.
Wow.
And as you can imagine, this
Yeah.
unusual union leads to a rather unexpected outcome.
Okay.
The birth of the Minotaur,
There it is.
a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull.
Wow. Okay, now we're talking.
Right.
So the Minotaur,
Yes.
this half-man, half-bull,
Yes.
is born from this rather bizarre series of events.
Uh-huh.
But where does he go from there? What happens to this creature?
Well, the Minotaur is a powerful and dangerous creature,
Right.
a living embodiment of Minos' transgression against Poseidon. And, as you might imagine,
Yeah.
a creature like that can't just roam free.
So they need a place to keep this monster.
Right.
Let's call it what it is.
Exactly. And who better to design such a place than Daedalus,
Ah.
the architect of Pasiphae's wooden cow?
The labyrinth.
Yes.
This is where things get really interesting.
They do.
Tell us more about that.
Daedalus constructs a vast and intricate maze
Uh-huh.
known as the labyrinth to imprison the Minotaur.
Okay.
It's a place designed to confuse and disorient,
Right.
making escape virtually impossible.
I remember reading about the labyrinth as a kid.
Right.
The idea of this massive maze filled with twists and turns.
Yeah.
And a monster lurking somewhere within it terrifying.
It's an image that has captivated imaginations for centuries.
Really has.
And what's interesting
Yeah.
is that there's a real place that adds another layer of intrigue
Oh.
to this myth. The Palace of Knossos.
All right.
Archaeological discoveries have revealed that this palace, with its sprawling layout and numerous chambers, was remarkably labyrinthine in design.
So the myth might be rooted in a real place.
It might be.
That's fascinating.
It is.
It makes you wonder if the Minotaur legend was inspired by the palace's structure.
It's possible. It certainly adds a tangible connection to the myth.
It does.
But adding to the labyrinth's sinister aura
Uh-oh.
are the excavations on Crete that have unearthed
What's that?
chilling evidence of human bones and even hints of cannibalism.
Hold on, cannibalism.
Yes,
That's a dark twist.
it is.
It almost makes you wonder if the Minotaur's diet, often described as human flesh,
Right.
was inspired by some dark reality on ancient Crete.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It is.
And that brings us to another key player in this myth,
Okay.
the Athenian hero Theseus.
Ah, yes. Theseus, the one who volunteers to be sent to Crete as tribute, determined to slay the Minotaur.
Exactly. He embodies the classic archetype of the hero who willingly faces danger to save his people. He knows that entering the labyrinth is essentially a suicide mission,
Oh.
but he's determined to end the cycle of sacrifice.
That takes incredible courage, especially knowing that the Minotaur is lurking within those walls, hungry for human flesh.
It does.
But Theseus doesn't face this challenge alone, does he?
You're right, he gets some crucial help from Ariadne,
Okay.
another daughter of Minos.
Another daughter? Wow, okay.
She falls for Theseus
Yeah.
and can't bear the thought of him dying in the labyrinth.
Young love. What does she do?
She provides him with a simple but life-saving tool,
What's that?
a ball of string,
Oh, yeah.
the famous thread.
That will guide him back out of the maze.
Exactly.
That thread is iconic.
It is.
It's such a simple solution, but absolutely brilliant.
Right.
Imagine trying to navigate that labyrinth without it. You'd be hopelessly lost.
You would.
And facing a creature with a taste for human flesh.
Exactly.
That thread was truly a lifeline.
It was.
So Theseus goes into the labyrinth armed with his sword. And Ariadne's thread, what happens next?
Well, that encounter,
Yeah.
the clash between man and monster, is
Right.
at the very heart of this myth.
Okay.
But before we get to that epic showdown,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to appreciate how the Minotaur's story, with its trials, helpers, and potential for triumph, fits into a broader narrative pattern known as the hero's journey.
The hero's journey. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more about that.
It's a narrative template found in stories across cultures and eras.
Good.
Theseus' adventure,
Uh-huh.
with its descent into the unknown,
Right.
his confrontation with the monstrous,
Yeah.
and his potential for rebirth, echoes the journeys of countless other heroes,
Oh, wow.
from ancient myths to modern-day blockbusters.
So this ancient Greek myth is connected to stories we still tell today.
It is.
That's fascinating.
It is.
It really highlights how these myths tap into universal themes that resonate with us across time and cultures.
Absolutely. But before we lose ourselves in the broader implications of the hero's journey,
Okay.
let's return to Theseus and his fateful encounter with the Minotaur.
After all, the outcome of this clash has major implications for both Athens and the Minotaur himself.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Theseus is there deep within the labyrinth,
Right.
every twist and turn a potential dead end,
Uh-huh.
the weight of Athens on his shoulders.
And the sound of the Minotaur's heavy breaths echoing in the darkness, it must have been terrifying.
Oh, it must have been.
But thankfully, he had that thread.
Right. Ariadne's thread, a symbol of hope and ingenuity
Against.
the monstrous.
Yeah.
Theseus finally comes face to face with the Minotaur.
What a moment, man versus monster, in the heart of the labyrinth, do our sources tell us how the fight played out.
You know, the ancient accounts tend to focus more on the symbolism of the battle
Okay.
than on a blow-by-blow description.
Gotcha.
What matters is that Theseus, through courage and cunning, manages to slay the beast.
It's a classic David and Goliath story, isn't it?
It is.
This young hero, armed with just a sword and a thread, taking down a creature born of divine intervention. Exactly, and his victory doesn't just liberate Athens from the burden of tribute,
Right.
it also frees the Minotaur itself.
That's an interesting way to look at it. How do you mean?
Well, think about the Minotaur's existence.
Okay.
Imprisoned in a maze,
Mhm.
forced to feed on human flesh.
Right.
Was he truly a monster or a victim of circumstance?
It's like that quote from Mary Renault's novel, The King Must Die. The
Yes.
monster is not born,
Right,
but
yeah.
made. The
Exactly.
Minotaur was a product of the god's whims and Manos' hubris.
Exactly. And by slaying the Minotaur, Theseus breaks the cycle of violence and suffering.
Wow.
It's a victory that has profound implications for both man and monster.
It makes you think about the nature of heroism. Sometimes it's not just about defeating a physical enemy,
Right. Yeah.
but also by confronting injustice and breaking free from the systems that perpetuate it.
It reminds us that even in ancient myths, there are layers of meaning that speak to timeless human concerns.
Yeah.
The struggle for freedom, the fight against tyranny, the desire for a just world.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the hero's journey,
Right.
but we can't forget about the Athenian youths who were sent as tribute before Theseus.
That's true.
They were innocent victims sacrificed to appease a creature that should never have existed in the first place.
You're right. Their fate underscores the tragic consequences of Minos' actions and a god's interference.
Right.
It makes you question where we place blame in such situations.
Yeah.
Is the Minotaur solely responsible for their deaths?
Right.
Or are there larger forces at play?
It's a complex question with no easy answers.
It is.
But by exploring these moral dilemmas within the myth, we gain insights into the human condition, our capacity for both cruelty and compassion, the struggle to make sense of a world where innocent people often suffer.
Absolutely. These ancient stories offer us a way to grapple with these difficult questions in a safe space, to explore the gray areas of morality and to consider the consequences of our actions.
So we've talked about the Minotaur's origins,
Right.
the terrifying labyrinth,
Yeah.
Theseus's heroic journey, and the ethical dilemmas embedded within this myth.
Yes.
But the Minotaur story doesn't end there, does it?
Not at all. In fact, in many ways, it's just the beginning.
Oh, okay.
The image of the Minotaur.
Yeah.
This powerful symbol of the monstrous has resonated throughout history, inspiring artists, writers, and even psychologists.
That's what's so fascinating about these ancient myths. They continue to find new life and meaning in different contexts. What are some examples of the Minotaur's lasting legacy?
Well, for one, the labyrinth itself has become a potent metaphor for the complexities of the human psyche.
Interesting.
The winding paths, the dead ends, the fear of being trapped.
Right.
These are all experiences we can relate to on a psychological level.
It makes sense we even use the term labyrinthine to describe complex or confusing situations.
Right.
It's as if the Minotaur myth has seeped into our language, shaping the way we think about the world around us.
Precisely. And the Minotaur itself, lurking at the center of the labyrinth, can be seen as representing our deepest fears, the shadowy parts of ourselves that we try to keep hidden.
It's a powerful image. The monster within it reminds us that we all have our own internal labyrinths to navigate, our own demons to confront.
Exactly. And just like Theseus needed Ariadne's thread to escape the labyrinth,
Yeah.
we often need guidance and support to navigate the complexities of our own inner world.
So the Minotaur myth isn't just a thrilling adventure story. It's a reflection of our own internal struggles, our fears, and our potential for both darkness and light.
You've hit the nail on the head, and that's why this myth continues to fascinate and challenge us,
Yeah.
even centuries after it was first told.
It's a reminder that the human experience, with all its complexities and contradictions, is timeless. But before we get too philosophical, I'm curious to hear more about how the Minotaur has been reimagined in modern times.
That's where things get really interesting. Contemporary artists and writers have taken the Minotaur myth and infused it with new meaning, exploring themes of identity isolation and the nature of monstrosity in ways the ancient Greeks might never have imagined. Exploring themes of identity isolation and the nature of monstrosity in ways the ancient Greeks might never have imagined.
So we've established that the Minotaur is more than just a monster in a maze.
Right.
It's a symbol that has resonated through time, reflecting our own fears and the darker side of human nature.
It has.
But how do modern retellings of the myth explore these themes?
That's where it gets really fascinating.
Oh.
Modern interpretations often delve into the psychological complexities of the Minotaur, exploring themes of isolation, abandonment,
Right.
and the struggle for identity.
For example, some retellings portray the Minotaur as a victim of circumstance.
Yes.
A creature born into a monstrous form and then further ostracized by society.
Right. Imagine being trapped in a labyrinth,
Yeah.
feared and rejected for something you can't control,
Right.
your appearance. These retellings ask us to consider how we label and judge others based on superficial traits.
It's a powerful message, especially in today's world where Appearances and snap judgments can have such a huge impact.
They do.
It reminds us to look beyond the surface and try to understand the complexities of individual lives.
Exactly. And some interpretations even go a step further,
Oh,
portraying the Minotaur as a sensitive, even intelligent creature,
okay.
capable of love and longing.
Wow, that's a huge shift from the traditional image of a mindless, bloodthirsty monster.
It challenges us to question our assumptions
Yeah,
about what makes a monster.
uh,
Is it solely their physical form,
right.
or are there deeper, more complex factors at play?
This reminds me of Jorge Luis Borges' short story, The House of Asterion.
Oh, yes.
He tells the Minotaur myth from the monster's perspective,
Right.
giving a voice to the creature who has long been silenced.
Borges' story is a brilliant example of how modern writers have reimagined the Minotaur, humanizing him and making us question our own prejudices.
And then there are retellings like the Netflix series Chaos,
Right.
which explore the Minotaur's origins and motivations in a completely new light.
Mm-hmm.
They present him as a complex figure capable of both violence and compassion,
Yeah.
a product of his environment rather than an inherently evil being.
These modern interpretations are so important because they remind us that there's often more to the story than meets the eye. They encourage us to challenge our assumptions and to consider alternative perspectives, even when it comes to those we might deem monstrous.
It's like the Minotaur is a mirror reflecting back our own anxieties and biases.
That's a great way to put it.
The way we perceive him says as much about ourselves as it does about the myth itself.
It's a testament to the enduring power of these ancient stories.
It is.
They offer a framework for exploring timeless human concerns, and they continue to evolve alongside our understanding of the world.
So after this deep dive into the myth of the Minotaur, what key takeaways should our listeners keep in mind?
First, remember that even the most ancient myths can still resonate with us today.
Okay.
The Minotaur's story speaks to our fears, our prejudices, and our capacity for both cruelty and compassion.
Second appearances can be deceiving.
Right.
The Minotaur, with his monstrous form, challenges us to look beyond the surface and consider the complexities of individual lives and motivations.
And finally, never underestimate the power of storytelling.
Okay.
Myths like the Minotaurs offer a unique lens through which we can explore the human condition and gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
We started this deep dive by imagining a world where bulls were symbols of power and fear.
Yes,
But the Minotaur story is so much more than that.
it is.
It's a tale of love, betrayal, revenge, and ultimately redemption.
It's a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of labyrinths, there's always hope for escape.
Yeah.
And sometimes the monsters we fear the most are reflections of our own inner demons.
So as we conclude our journey into the labyrinth, we leave you with this final thought.
Okay,
What monsters lurk within your labyrinth,
that's a good question.
and how will you face them?
We've barely scratched the surface of this fascinating myth.
Right.
If you're eager to explore further, check out the sources we mentioned in the show notes.
Definitely.
And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that intrigue you.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring. Contemporary artists and writers have taken the Minotaur myth and infused it with new meaning, exploring themes of identity isolation and the nature of monstrosity in ways the ancient Greeks might never have imagined.
So we've established that the Minotaur is more than just a monster in a maze.
Right.
It's a symbol that has resonated through time, reflecting our own fears and the darker side of human nature.
Right.
But how do modern retellings of the myth explore these themes?
Well, that's where it gets really fascinating. Modern interpretations often delve into the psychological complexities of the Minotaur, exploring themes of isolation, abandonment, and the struggle for identity.
For example, some retellings portray the Minotaur as a victim of circumstance, a creature born into a monstrous form and then further ostracized by society.
Right. Imagine being trapped in a labyrinth, feared and rejected for something you can't control your appearance.
Oh, yeah.
These retellings ask us to consider, how we label and judge others based on superficial traits.
It's a powerful message, especially in today's world, where appearances and snap judgments can have such a huge impact.
Right.
It reminds us to look beyond the surface and try to understand the complexities of individual lives.
Absolutely. And some interpretations even go a step further, portraying the Minotaur as a sensitive, even intelligent creature capable of love and longing.
Wow, that's a huge shift from the traditional image of a mindless, bloodthirsty monster.
It is. It challenges us to question our assumptions about what makes a monster. Is it solely their physical form,
Right.
or are there deeper, more complex factors at play?
This reminds me of Jorge Luis Borges' short story, The House of Asterium.
Oh yeah, great story.
He tells the Minotaur myth from the monster's perspective, giving a voice to the creature who has long been silenced.
Borges' story is a brilliant example of how modern writers have reimagined the Minotaur, humanizing him and making us question our own prejudices.
And then there are retellings like the Netflix series Chaos,
Yeah.
which explore the Minotaur's origins and motivations in a completely new light. They present him as a complex figure capable of both violence and compassion, a product of his environment, rather than an inherently evil being.
I think these modern interpretations are so important because they remind us that there's often more to the story than meets the eye.
Right.
They encourage us to challenge our assumptions and to consider alternative perspectives, even when it comes to those we might deem monstrous.
It's like the Minotaur is a mirror reflecting back our own anxieties and biases. The way we perceive him says as much about ourselves as it does about the myth itself.
That's a great way to put it. It's a testament to the enduring power of these ancient stories. They offer a framework for exploring timeless human concerns, and they continue to evolve alongside our understanding of the world.
So after this deep dive into the myth of the Minotaur, what key takeaways should our listeners keep in mind?
Well, first, I think remember that even the most ancient myths can still resonate with us today. The Minotaur story speaks to our fears, our prejudices, and our capacity for both cruelty and compassion.
The second appearances can be deceiving. The Minotaur with his monstrous form challenges us to look beyond the surface and consider the complexities of individual lives and motivations.
And finally, never underestimate the power of storytelling myths. Like the Minotaurs offer a unique lens through which we can explore the human condition and gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
We started this deep dive by imagining a world where bulls were symbols of power and fear, but the Minotaur story is so much more than that. It's a tale of love, betrayal, revenge, and ultimately redemption.
Right. It's a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of labyrinth, there's always hope for escape. And sometimes the monsters we fear the most are reflections of our own inner demons.
So as we conclude our journey into the labyrinth, we leave you with this final thought. What monsters lurk within your labyrinth, and how you face them? We've barely scratched the surface of this fascinating myth if you're eager to explore further. Check out the sources we mentioned in the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that intrigue you. Until next time, keep exploring.